Greetings, everyone. I'm excited to welcome Brett Carlson, co-founder and CEO at ServiceUp. Brett, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you here. Let's kick this off. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Been a tech guy my entire adult life, which is now a long time. Let's call it, unfortunately for me, 25 years plus. Always been on the business side of the equation. Early in my career, sales guy. And then I started spinning off doing my own startups or being early on in other people's startups, but always on the business side of the journey.
Okay. And so is this your first startup or multiple startups?
No, this is the third I've been quote unquote founder. I always think it's funny when you're like the CEO of a startup. I mean, I get all these LinkedIn requests from like CEOs of like 4-person company. So yeah, this is my third. And then I've been early on in other people's startups, like, part of the original crew. Cloudera was probably the biggest one, the most well-known.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So long tech career so far. Well, tell us now, about your third startup or third endeavor, ServiceUp. Tell us what projects or products and their services it offers.
So we are a repair platform for vehicles. In simple terms, we started out because everybody wants to do everything digitally on their phone, and there was no way to repair your vehicle on your phone. So rewind, let's call it 4.5 years ago when I got presented with the whole opportunity. I was more of a kind of cutting edge data type of guy. Like the last 3 companies I'd either worked for or founded had all been elite data plays, either moving it, transforming it, or storing it. And so when somebody came along and said, hey, we're working on this car repair startup, I was basically like, well, why are you calling me? And then I quickly looked into the space, and the overall market, the TAM, is about 250 billion annually. And the technology at the time was still extremely archaic, stuck in like 1982, and it was extremely fragmented. So I was like, I don't think I've ever seen a TAM this large where it hasn't been fully digitized or brought into like modern platforms.
Okay. And so I was looking at your website. So looks like you focus on fleet operators, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So give us an example of what is a fleet operator?
Okay. So let me even continue a few years back, apologize.
Mm-hmm.
So we initially got into it with consumers because everybody wants to function on their phone. And so the initial premise was you pick up your phone, fix my car, somebody comes to get your vehicle, wherever you're at, doesn't matter. We would take the vehicle away. We would send it to a repair facility that we would manage, but just through technology. I always said earlier on, we were much like DoorDash, where DoorDash connected hungry people with restaurants. All we did was connect vehicles that needed service with shops. So we were just pure technology. And we went that route for about 2 years. Everybody loved it. We were growing. But then we had a few large fleet customers come to us, think somebody like a DoorDash or an Uber, and say, hey, will you repair our driver's vehicle? And we got really excited, and we launched pilots in LA and Phoenix. And then we quickly figured out that the money was not as good with kind of gig drivers because they're cheap, they're relatively frugal, as they have to be. They need their vehicle to be on the road. So they had an easier time going to something like Jiffy Lube. But then we started looking at, look at all these fleets out there, last mile delivery, like UPS, Amazon, FedEx, all the rental car companies. And so we started to go after them in more of a B2B traditional model. And the dollars are just a lot cleaner. The margins are better. The operating margins are better. So about 2.5 years ago, we got fully out of consumer and we landed fully into fleet as well as insurance providers. So we also repair consumer vehicles through insurance companies.
Okay, interesting. So they're probably, for just the person not experienced with fleet operators, there's probably more than you think out there. Like you said, it's a big TAM. So it could be, say, a large company that, I don't know, has just a fleet of vans that they use for something or moving, cargo from facility to facility, for example.
Yes. And I'll give you an idea. I won't say the name of the company, but they're one of our largest customers. They're one of the larger online retailers on planet Earth. And just for collision, so they have all these vans that are moving around the physical world delivering packages. And just for collision, they spend about $175 million a year just on collision. So the numbers are very, very large. That doesn't include tires, windshield, minor mechanical, major mechanical. And then in that process, since it is very archaic and you can't fully automate the whole thing because it's very much tied to the physical world, a lot of that technology, and I'm not joking, is like 1995. Like you go into these facilities and they have an old school monitor that's covered in grease and oil, and the keypad is still like from, 1995. And so the technology opportunity is enormous. It is rather fun for me to go recruit engineers and say, hey, you've been working at Google and you've been working on something that increases efficiency 1.75%. Come work on my stuff. It increases efficiency like 2,000%.
Yeah. 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 It's a nice story. So current customer base. So it sounds like, is this a global customers right now? Or are you focused in the US?
We're just focused right now, US, Canada, Mexico. We're operating that we will be brought into Europe by our largest customer sometime the end of 2026.
Okay. Okay. So European expansion. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what year did you found ServiceUp?
2021. We were coming out of COVID.
Oh, okay.
So the founding story, I'll do it in 45 seconds. One of the original founders was a shop owner. In the middle of COVID, their 10-year lease expired, and they didn't realize that their 10-year lease terms were really good. Like their lease was great. And in the middle of COVID, they're like, well, I can't redo my lease right now. I don't really people aren't coming in. So their existing customers, all they did was they signed wholesale deals with existing shops within like the geographic region that they were operating. And they brought the shop there offering pickup and delivery because of COVID. And then after 90 days of doing this, they started looking at their financials and they're like, wow, having no overhead, no mechanics, our asset cost is like nearly nothing. We're actually making more money just moving cars around in a geographic region. And so that was kind of the inflection point and how it started.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's interesting. Well, so value prop really clear. Let's switch to the fundraising side. How much capital have you raised to date?
We just closed our Series B over the summer. It was a $55 million Series B. Between our seed round and our Series A, which Tiger Global led our Series A and Peak Span led our Series B, we're about $70 million in total raised.
Okay. So 70 million. So just recently raised that Series B. And so tell us, so traditional path, so say seed, Series A, and now Series B. And looking back at that Series B, any big differences that you see in what, investors are looking for from a Series A company to a Series B?
Yeah. Well, also, when we were raising our Series A, it was just before the capital markets kind of like fell apart. And then we were very frugal, which is not in, my nature. I'm not a frugal guy. I'm more of like a cowboy, let's go conquer the world tomorrow kind of guy. So we were very frugal with our Series A money, which even I was more proud of the way we built the company up and grew the company and had all this like amazing growth. And then going through the Series B process, obviously, with an A, they're just looking for a good idea, good founding team, product, like a product that could fit the market, a large TAM. And then I would say the biggest thing that I learned is if you're going to call something out around your metrics, you better hit them as you're going through like a Series B. Where a Series A is maybe more philosophical, or you're talking about a technology that could work. Series B is all about metrics.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Series A, maybe some data metrics, but more like you said, product market fit, showing signs of traction. But Series B, hopefully you've got some traction now, you want to scale. And so when you say call out your metrics, would it be, all right, this is our, bookings forecast for the year, revenue forecast, things like that, that if you're putting numbers out that you better hit them?
Yes, for absolute sure, which has been an evolution over the last, 5 or 10 years for me, because I've always been like, let's be very, very, very aggressive and try to, hit $1 billion in a day. And in reality, I've had to learn like, okay, let's actually forecast this out. Like we're forecasting to the street. Like let's be as accurate in our numbers through this Series B process as we would be if we were a public company reporting to the street.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that same level of scrutiny. And Brett, you've multiple time founder. Any lessons learned in this process or other fundraisers that kind of stand out that you'd like to share with the founder community that you maybe wish you knew when you were starting?
Oh yeah, this is one of my. It was absurdly painful at the time, and I've noticed like most of the good lessons I've learned involve like blood, sweat, and tears. Like I don't really learn lessons driving around my G-Wagon at a stop sign. I learn everything through like, ooh, that one hurt. I made a mistake. And so we were doing a social betting startup. So think of all like the DraftKings and FanDuels and all the platforms that are now worth 50 billion, 100 billion. And early on, we were actually in direct competition with them under the notion of you could bet on anything and everything. You could bet on a stock going up. You could bet on whether it was going to rain tomorrow in San Jose, California. And so we had a core platform and we had launched it and we raised seed money and we were going out and we were talking to all of like the top VCs on Sand Hill Road. Like, I mean, I could list out the names. Everybody's heard of them. They're world famous. They are absurdly smart. Like a lot of those people are just flat out geniuses in building companies and getting in the market. And so we sat down and I showed everybody how we were going to monetize. I said, we've raised seed money. I'm going to come back to you in 6 to 9 months and we're going to start raising an A round. Here's how we're going to monetize the platform. And I had a whole bunch of say, look, we don't really care about how you're going to monetize it. We just want you to go collect eyeballs. So just go get as many eyeballs as possible. Come back to us in a year and give us an update. How many people are in the platform? So we fully pivot the entire product. We go back to the garage. We were out of a garage at the time. We fully pivot how we're going to go to market to optimize on eyeballs. We optimize on eyeballs. I think we had about 75,000 weekly active users at the time. We go back out to these large VCs and we say, hey, look, we're going to raise our Series A. Here's what we're doing. Here's what's going on. And I had one person look at me and they said, well, how are you going to monetize it? And he was literally the same guy who 9 months earlier told me to go collect eyeballs. But at the time I was a little younger, I'd never raised any money. And so I just sat there and I just took it. And I said, well, I tried to pull up some old slides. And then 48 hours later, we drop into another venture firm. And I guarantee everybody would know the person and the firm that this was. And he said the same exact thing to me. Well, how are you going to monetize? And so I was frustrated. So I leaned back in my chair and said, hold on a second. I sat in this exact same room. And 9 months ago, you literally said, don't worry about monetizing, go get eyeballs. And before I finished the sentence, he said, markets change. Now you need to be able to monetize. And our issue was Facebook had just gone public and everybody hated social for about 6 months. This is a long time ago. So there was a short time where everybody hated social because nobody understood like how they're going to make money. And so what I learned is you can be talking to one of the smarter guys in venture, and just because he has an idea, maybe doesn't make it the right idea. So like you really have to understand your market and your product. Because if you're talking to a whole bunch of venture people, they're going to give you different ideas and they're going to try to like push you in certain directions. So you really got to have conviction.
Yeah. Yeah, no, appreciate the insight there from those boardrooms. So yeah, great lessons learned along the way. And Brett, with your product and going after these fleet operators, and sounds like pretty big companies. So tell us a little bit about your go-to-market motion. How are you reaching out, finding these companies?
So in the larger companies, the big last mile delivery firms like the FedExes, the UPSs, the Amazons, indoor, like rental car companies, Hertz, Enterprise, Avis 6. We have a traditional sales staff. So we engage them in an enterprise sales model. We also have a mid-market sales team. And then we also are heavily reliant on the channel and partnering up in mid-market. So we go after our client base, our customer base, just like any traditional SaaS platform would, even though we don't necessarily monetize like a SaaS platform, but we sell actively like we are a SaaS platform.
Okay. Yeah. So enterprise mid-market motion. And that was going to be my next question is pricing. So you're saying not traditional SaaS platform, but so how do you price your product?
We make our money on the actual transaction. So we believe in building really solid software that sits on both sides of the equation, the fleet or insurance side, as well as the shop side. And then we monetize on the transaction flow.
Okay. So if, like you said, if there's some collision repair that goes through and whatever that costs, you're monetizing through part of that.
Yeah. We just take a small percentage off of that. And I look back a lot at what DoorDash did right and what DoorDash did wrong. And so I've been obsessed with DoorDash because in a lot of ways, I am just DoorDash for car repair. And early on, how DoorDash went to market was extremely smart. And then I'm of the belief that they left a massive market open where they controlled the actual order. So they controlled the user experience, and then it went into the restaurants And if they were smart, they would have monetized on the restaurant side application, because at the time, all the applications inside the restaurant were extremely disparate old. There were multiple, there was no kind of leader in the market. Where then Toast came in and Toast said, hey, we're going to streamline and automate on all these restaurant applications. Where I'm of the belief where DoorDash missed a massive opportunity because they were the controller of that small little data set, which was the order going into the restaurant.
Yeah. And I'm curious, so as you take a percentage of these transactions, so not that peer will just charge X per month. So how, especially in the Series B and say with PeakSpan, how are they trying to understand the health of your recurring revenue, the health of, say, this transactional revenue, to know that it's, moving up and to the right, or it's predictable?
So we look at a few things. Obviously, we look at the scale and breadth at which we're growing on the enterprise side. And then we generally know that when we bring in a new customer, it takes, let's call it 9 months to get 50% of their overall transactions. So we just model it out through a pure sales channel, and then it filters into the transaction flow. There is no necessarily reoccurring model, like there is no SaaS revenue. But over time, what we learned over a 9 to 18 month period, our customers will start to reallocate their internal resources to no longer handle repairs. So we've had customers that have had, let's call it 30 people repairing vehicles across North America. And then after they've implemented our platform, they have one person and they've reallocated or removed those, other 29. And so our mode is generally process on our customer side.
In say under traditional subscription models, look at gross revenue retention, net revenue retention, but in this case, are those metrics less applicable? And is it more just, say, with one fleet operator, just the volume of transactions going through, I don't know, average transaction cut, or things that like that you look
Correct.
at the velocity of that customer?
Correct.
Okay.
In a lot of ways, we look at the health of our business much like a credit card processor would, kind of just transactions per day right now.
Okay. Interesting. And then, Brett, at this stage of your business, what you founded in 2021, is there a number or financial metric or operational metric that you like to use to guide the business, or multiple?
2, the amount of new vehicles we get into the platform. So that requires obviously a traditional sales motion. And then on the shop side, the percentage that our platform is used on the shop side for all of their repairs. We generally like to be about 50% of repairs on the shop side.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So these operational metrics. So yeah, appreciate that insight. So a few stats and figures before we wrap up. So do you guys have a headquarters location?
Yeah, we're in the South Bay. We're about 9 miles away from the Apple spaceship. We're in Campbell, California right now. We just got a much larger office because we're growing so much. We were in Los Gatos for the first 4 years. Now we're in Campbell, California, just pretty close to Apple and Google.
Okay. And then what's your current team size?
I think our FTE right now is about 75, and then we probably have another 30 that are contractors, but we consider them FTEs. They're just offshore. So let's call it 100.
Okay. Yeah. Common. And then as far as a sense of scale, anything you want to share around revenue ranges, ARR ranges? Well, I guess ARR maybe not, but revenue ranges.
So I was recently told that I should keep my mouth shut about our monthly revenue because people knock on the door wanting to acquire us. So, which is a good problem to have. And by the way, I always thought that when you kind of hit this point of in a massive growth phase where just it is massive hockey stick, that you sleep better, you be more relaxed, maybe you want to celebrate, but it's actually, I swear, I think it's more stressful than when things are going bad.
Yeah, interesting. So more revenue creates more things to do. Yeah,
it does. And I am back to not sleeping, so I just wander in the office at 2 a.m. instead of laying in my bed playing sheet karate.
Yeah. And well, Brett, appreciate the time today. So we're close to wrapping up 2020, a couple of months, 4 months left in 2025, but what's coming up next on the horizon for ServiceUp?
We're really, really layered into agents. So whether they're voice agents, obviously the whole ecosystem is massively evolved. We have a voice agent that actively calls into our shops. 6 months ago, I could tell it was a robot. And then about 3 months ago, I actually thought somebody was playing a trick on me and it was a real person. It's absurdly good. And then we're really doubling down on like understanding a geographic region around optimizing shop capacity. So if you think Uber used to do surge pricing, we're going to be able to understand shop capacity in a geographic region so we can like monitor price better.
Okay. And of course, a lot of talk about agentic AI, but you say voice agent calling into a shop. Can you like what's the use case? What's the purpose of that call?
So when we go into a new market, we used to have to do it very manually. And then over time, we've gotten much better. So now we scrape a whole bunch of data off of the internet. We get about 32 different data points. We used to have an offshore team call into the market before we would actually drop human beings in the market. And so now when we're looking for shops, we have a voice agent call. So we can call 200 shops at the same time and ingest all that data around the shop network within let's call it Denver or St. Louis. And then we know exactly who we're going to meet. And when we drop our physical team in, we're much more efficient.
Okay. Is this a prospecting call or something else? Are they already a customer?
No. Think of it as it is mildly a prospecting call where we need, let's call it 50 shops in a new geographic territory. And so we have an ideal shop profile. Kind of the bottom 20% is not ideal for us, and the top to 10% is not ideal for us. So we got to find that middle part of the shop network where they do great work, they're willing to use technology, and then they obviously want more business.
Okay. So it's more of like just maybe digging for info or a little discovery call, just learning more about that shop then that the voice
Yeah, we
agent
need
is
to
doing.
find out like if they're willing to pay our rates, how many mechanics they have, the exact tools, if they do like minor thing, major things, the kind of paint they use. And so, like I said, traditionally that would take us like a week or two using like 10 people that are offshore resources. And now it can be done in 10 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. So then that preps your team before they go in there. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Making it much more efficient. Well, interesting. Yeah. So that's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that. So Brett, appreciate your time today, sharing your journey. If listeners would like to learn more about ServiceUp, where should we send them online?
I always like to point them towards LinkedIn, Brett Carlson, founder, CEO of ServiceUp, or you can just go to our website, serviceup.com, and find me there.
All right, perfect. Well, check out serviceup.com to learn more or check out Brett's profile on LinkedIn. And again, Brett, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me.